Hello, this is John with Tandem Solution, and I'm here to present to you today using Excel for self-service business intelligence. If you like this and would like to see more events and news, please sign up at www.trainingforit.com/sign up. You can also follow me on Twitter at John Ecken, and I'm available on LinkedIn at John Ecken also. We're going to start off by looking at the different versions of BI. We kind of start off with what we call personal BI. In personal BI, this is kind of what your users are doing today. They're using Excel. They may be copying data into Excel from other data sources. They're creating pivot charts. They're creating normal charts. And they're maybe taking that to a meeting, handing that out, letting people look at the data. But it's really not as interactive as it could be. The data is often static. So anytime the data changes, that user is going to have to refresh that data, maybe by copying it in again. And then when that happens, they might have to rebuild their formulas. And they really don't have the ability to really share that data out to the workforce. As we move over into what we considered self-service BI, this is going to allow the user to use the same tool, Excel, but bring in the power tools. Bring in Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View, maybe even Power Maps for video. And then with the use of SharePoint, they can share that Excel workbook out to the public company where a lot more users can access that data. If you incorporate something even like Power BI, that's going to let the users to really use a natural language to ask questions and get answers back based on the data in that workbook. Now, occasionally, we still need the professionally authored reports using something like Crystal Reports or Microsoft Reporting Services. These are typically reports that are going to be long-term or going to be maybe used for public consumption and still need that more professional look to them. Self-service BI really lets users personalize reports. One of the biggest things about self-service BI that we'll see, it's the ability of users to get the data that they need when they need it without involving a developer or the IT department. Today, more than anything, we have so much data available to us. And more companies are seeing the value of that data. But we cannot continuously embark on our IT department or our development staff to constantly be creating new reports, maintaining reports that are already available to us. So we really look at the end user and the business user to start doing that process. With that, it kind of creates a new role in our organizations called a data steward. We have great developers in many organizations, great report writers in many organizations, but sometimes those users don't know the data as well as the individuals that use the data. So as we start to look at the concept of utilizing some type of self-service BI solution, we have to turn to the people that really know the data. We have to turn to them to determine where does our data actually sit? What data do we need? How do we filter that data correctly so that we're only seeing the data that is actually relative to the report that we're working on? Ask them, how do we make sure that the data that we're visually looking at is it correct? You know, there's a lot of data out there, and we got to make sure that we've got the right data in the right appropriate time that we need it in so that we can work through and display this information. We're going to be looking at self-service BI for Office. You know, when you think about the tools that are available for self-service reporting, Excel immediately comes into mind as one of the best tools available. Many users are already using Excel. So again, it's natural to them. It allows them to easily build, discover, and analyze their data. They can create great visualizations through the use of just standard charting, through pivot tables, through pivot charts, using something as simple as Power View to build better visualizations, even all the way up to Power Maps. With SharePoint, we're able to quickly share that data, secure that data. Using things like Power BI, we can go in and ask questions of that data, and then all that can be quickly converted and made accessible through a mobile platform. Power Query is a new tool added into Excel 2013 that really allows us to discover and connect the data from all different data sources. That's one of the main problems that we see now with data is not all the data we need sits in one location. We have our corporate databases, and there's a lot of great data available to us in those databases, those data sources. But there's a lot of data also available on the web. A lot of people are currently using some type of software for service, such as Salesforce. And a lot of the data that we need might be out in that type of environment. So with Power Query, we're able to actually go out and obtain this data from multiple locations. We can bring the data in, we can manipulate the data, we can merge the data from different sources, and we can really do all this in an easy, manageable tool. And the great part about this is the individuals don't need to know SQL. All they need to know is kind of simple filters, simple, what a grouping is. It's a really nice, easy tool to use to be able to really bring that data in and analyze that data in our Excel environment. Okay, let's take a look at Power Query. When I go to the Power Query tab, you will notice I have a few sections already split out. One is my external data. I have the ability to get data from Excel. I have the ability to combine data. I also have the ability to look at what workbook queries I already have. And then some other settings and things like that that I can use. So we're going to start by gathering some data from our corporate data source. You'll notice when I click from database, I have tons of options of different databases that are available. So again, this is not just a Microsoft, only access data from SQL. You can really get data from anywhere that you want. I'm going to type in my server name and connection, and this is going to allow me to connect to my database. Again, I need no knowledge of SQL, but I do need knowledge of what data tables are available in my database. You'll notice quickly as I hover over a data table, it does give me a nice little quick view of the data, and that will help us locate the data that we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and double click on a data table to open up the Power Query editor. And you can see it initially loads about 50 rows of data. So again, it's not overwhelming where, if you've got 1 million rows of data that you're working with, that you're going to load them all at one time. And then it puts all my rows or columns available to me to allow some editing to occur. So let's make a few quick changes to our data. First thing we're going to do is we're going to filter our data to just include California. So I'm going to go over here to city, hit that drop down. So I'm going to go over here to state. I'm going to hit that drop down, and I'm going to have the ability to just check California. You'll notice that it says list may be incomplete because it only loads a subset of the data in the beginning. My filters might not be 100% there. So if I feel like I am missing something, I can hit load more and it will requery the data looking for the rest of my filters. So I'm going to take the select all off and I'm going to choose California. I'm going to hit OK. And now that's going to filter this down to just California. One of the nice things about the query editor is if you do make a mistake, you see over here where it says applied steps, you can quickly just take that step away and that will undo whatever you did. So let me set that filter one more time. And now we're ready to go. A couple other things I can do quickly with the editor is to build additional columns. So let's say for order date, we would like to see the time broken down by year, quarter, and month. I can simply select order date. I'm going to go to the add column. I'm going to go down here to date, and I'm going to say year. And you'll see that quickly builds me a year column. Go back to order date, time, date here, and say quarter of the year. Back to order date, go down here and choose the month. So this allows me to quickly build other columns of data that, again, I don't need to have a background in SQL to accomplish that. Other things that you can do is we do have the ability to transform columns. Split columns is really nice. You can actually give it a delimiter and it will produce the column into two separate columns. We can parse out a column, we can format a column, just little things that are nice and easy things to do with our data. So I'm kind of done with this section of our data, so I'm going to go ahead and do a close and load. And what we're going to see is it's going to now pull that data into my Excel spreadsheet. It's going to create a new sheet for that, and it's going to load every row of data in based on the filtered criteria that I specified. So here you see we've got a little over 19,000 rows loaded in our data table. From here, this is still an Excel spreadsheet, so I can apply additional formulas if I need to. I can filter the data down even further if I want to look at, say, just year 2007. But again, that's not affecting my query. It is just affecting the data that I'm looking at in my spreadsheet at this time. So let's go ahead and bring in one more chunk of data. In my spreadsheet, one of the things I don't have available to me is population data. So if I'm doing some type of pivot chart or pivot table, and I maybe want to see how cells relate to the population of a particular zip code, I would like to have that data. So I actually have a website that breaks down zip codes and population information. So this is from the Census Bureau's 2010 census. So what I can actually do, if I want to use that data, is I can go back up here to Power Query. I'm going to say from web, and that's going to allow me to extract data from a website. Now, when you do this, it will only extract data that is in a table format, or it will extract the whole page. So again, not every website is going to be very inclusive for grabbing data. You can see now I have my website loaded, and I'm going to hover over my choose population by zip code, and you can see the zip code and population. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. I'm going to do a quick formatting. In my other data table, it brings zip code in as string. So if I want to be able to compare these, I want to change that over to text data also. And then instead of really working with this data, I'm going to click here and say merge these two queries together. So that is going to allow me to select the zip code field of the current query that I'm looking at. I'm going to choose my cell summary query, and I'm going to select the postal code field. It does allow me to specify the type of data that these are. That is good for, you can control public access versus private access. And then I'm also going to tell it to only include matching rows. So I'm going to hit OK, and now it's going to combine those two data tables together. And then I'm going to expand out my pre-existing data so that it's all in one table. The nice thing about when you do the expansion, you can choose to pick just certain columns of data. And then I'm also going to get rid of the zip code field since I really don't need it listed twice. I have both zip code and postal code. This time I'm going to do a close and load to, and then I'm also going to go ahead and put this into my data model so that we can do some additional modeling of our data with Power Pivot. So we get that reloaded. One of the things we're going to notice here is after the reload is our number of rows remains the same, and that's real important. We wanted to make sure that once we added the zip code and the population data, that we didn't eliminate any rows from our initial sales summary report. One more quick look at Power Query. I just want to show that there are a ton of available data sources available. You have things even like Salesforce. This was recently added in November of this year. We have business objects. We can get data from Facebook. So if you are tracking a product or tracking trending on how people are using social media, you can extract that data directly into our Excel environment. Now, once we get our data, the next step is how do we better model that data? And that's where we really turn to Power Pivot. Power Pivot was introduced in Excel 2010, and it really takes our data to the next level. A couple of things that Power Pivot allows us to do. One is to better format our data. We can go in and we can choose how many decimals to display. We can format our dates, format our currencies. We can also tell how data is related. You might have data sitting in multiple sheets in an Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to be able to go in and truly connect those together. We can also build hierarchies. So when we look at data, we can build that so that we can look at years. We can then drill down into quarters, then drill down into months, even as far down into weeks or days if we want to. That gives us a huge advantage when we're looking at things like pivot tables, where we can actually go in and bring in a time hierarchy or a location hierarchy into our pivot table and then drill up and down through that hierarchy with ease. Now that we got our data in through Power Query, let's look at how Power Pivot can help us better model that data. So I'm going to click on the Power Pivot tab. I'm going to go over here to Manage to launch my Power Pivot editor. Now, Power Pivot has some similarities to Power Query. It gives us the ability to go in and make modifications to our data sets. So we're going to do a couple modifications here. We're going to start by going to our line total, and since we really are looking at more aggregated data, I'm going to go ahead and take that down to just showing, actually showing no decimals. And I'm also going to go ahead and let my Power Pivot know that this is actually currency that we're working with. So I'm going to hit that and run it back, and it's going to require me to take those down one more time, and that's fine. I can do the same thing with my order date, and kind of look at the format and say, okay, that makes more sense to me with how I want to display my dates in my reports. The other thing that's great about Power Pivot is the ability to look at your data in a diagram view. So I'm going to go ahead and click on diagram view here, and you can see my data. Now, if I had other data tables loaded, I would be able to build hierarchies and relationships between those 2 or 3 or more tables. In here, though, I do want to build an actual hierarchy. So a hierarchy gives me a way of building a drill down type solution in my data. So I'm going to click the Create Hierarchy button. I'm going to call this one Time. And then I'm going to pull in my hierarchy. So I'm going to build my year, my quarter, and my month. Let's go ahead and build one more hierarchy here for location. And for location, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the state name, the city, and then the postal code. And we'll do one more real quick one here for product line. So and with this one, we're going to bring in our parent category. Subcategory, and product name. Okay, and there's a lot of other things that we could do with modeling of the data. And again, that's the advantage of our Power Pivot, is it really lets us take our data and see it in a different format. If you combine this with analysis services and the tabular data models, you can actually build a real powerful solution to your data warehouse. So I'm done with this. I'm going to go ahead and let's just show how we can throw this into a pivot table real quick. And again, I'll show the advantages of using the hierarchies. Is now I can just pull, let's say, time in as the column, location over here as my rows, and let's take a look at the total line item and the population. Now for population, I'm going to go ahead and change that. Instead of being a sum, I just want to grab the average population. And you can see with my hierarchies, now I can really drill in. So I can say California, let's go look at Beverly Hills. And I can see the 90210 zip code here in Beverly Hills. I can see what my total sales are. I can see my population. Again, my population should remain the same throughout, which is good. And then if I really want to drill down through time, I can go into year 2007, look at Q1, and look at my first 3 months of that year. So again, with the use of that modeling, it allows me a nice quick drill down capability throughout my data. Power View was newly introduced to us in Excel 2013. But it was originally kind of a part of the SharePoint and the SQL 2012 environment. What Power View allows us to do is to bring the power of reporting into Excel. So instead of having to use something like Report Builder or Crystal Reports, Microsoft Reporting Services, we can actually build that interactive reporting capabilities directly in our Excel environment. Now, what it also gives us is a great flexibility for interactivity. We can have different parts of reports, and as we go in and click on each part, all of the other parts of reports are going to work together. So as I go to filter down a section, I don't have to filter it 2 or 3 times. I click one time and I get a nice movement. Once you get your report the way you like it, then we can use things like Power BI to push that report into our SharePoint environment and make that report available for all our users. Okay, now that we've gotten our data, let's see how we can use Power View to better present that data. I'm going to go to Insert and choose Power View, which is going to open up a new sheet in my Excel spreadsheet. Now, again, Power View, you do have to remember, is kind of new. So there are some things in Power View that I feel like will be improved on as new updates come available to it. So you see immediately, because I had my data selected, when I went into Power View, it kind of built a quick, easy chart for me. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is go ahead, I'm just going to delete this grid because this isn't exactly what I want to look at. So we're going to take that out. And I'm going to start pulling in some data. So I'm going to start by building first my slicers. Slicers are a real easy way for us to drill down or to filter out the data that we're looking at. So I want to do this by product. So I'm going to pull in the category for our products. So we got accessories, bikes, clothing, and components. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'd like to build a little pie chart here. So I'm going to pull in, let's say, product name. And I want to pull in line total. And then you see it brings it in as a grid. I want to go over here to other chart. I'm going to simply change that to a pie chart. And so now the pie chart shows up. Now again, I haven't done any filtering, so there's a lot of data being presented here. So let's say I want to look specifically at bikes. We're going to change that to a slicer first, and then now I'm going to click on bikes, and you'll see that it drops those down. Now again, there's still way too many products here listed. So maybe instead of by product name, let's go ahead and switch that out to just be subcategory. So now I get a little bit better looking pie chart. I can kind of filter that up a little bit. I can go in and click on that chart, go to layout. I'm going to take my title out, make that a little bigger. And the nice thing about Power View is that anytime I want to really expand in on something, let's say I want to look at this pie chart, I can click the little expand or pop out button, and you can see now it takes that pie chart into full screen. Really nice when you're presenting data. You'll also notice as you hover over the data, it actually shows what the summary data is. Now let's do one more item here. I love to look at maps. So let's grab our data again. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in subcategory. And I'm going to go ahead and pull in line total. And then we're going to also pull in postal code. So this is going to now show me subcategories by postal code and percent of sales or total sales. And I'm going to change that though to a map. And so now you can see how it builds me a nice looking map based on my total sales in this geographical area. And when I get onto that map, you can see I can pull it around. I can zoom in to that map if I want to. And really it makes a nice presentation. If I want to look at clothing, boom, I click on clothing. It goes ahead, it rebuilds my map for me and rebuilds my pie chart. I do have the ability to look at more than one filter or slicer at a time. So you can see simple ways of building presentable data through the use of Power View. Again, I feel like this product is very new, so I think we're going to see a lot of changes in Power View over the next year or so, which is going to give us a lot more capability than what we even have now. The last tool we want to look at is Power Map. Power Map's a new tool. It's still kind of considered in the beta stage. And this allows us to really go out and build interaction and geographical maps in a way we've never seen before. It is more of a movie style presentation where you're displaying data usually over time. You can overlay multiple data points and really set yourself up for a stunning presentation to present to your managers or shareholders of your business. Okay, let's take a quick look at Power Map and see how it can give us a new way of presenting our data in more of a 3D mapping style. So I've pulled my data over into Power Map, and then I'm going to make sure that I select my appropriate geographical area. So I'm going to choose zip code here. I'm going to click next. I want to choose what is going to be my height indicator. So that is going to be the subtotal of sales. I'm not going to do any categories this time, and then I'm also going to pull in my order date though as a time field. Quickly you'll see that the map is built. Now again, my data is just focused on the California region. So let's zoom in here a little bit more. Do one more setting here. Let's say we want this to last, let's say a total of 10 seconds. We'll do a little bit of a circle effect. And I want to pull down the thickness of my boxes just a little bit, a little too much there. So we can kind of get a little bit of a transition that we can see them. Now, to show you here, I'm going to go ahead and play my tour. And as you can see, as we scroll through time, we're seeing the total sales taking place in those particular geographical areas. Again, that's a simple demonstration of how Power Maps can be used, but if you were presenting data looking at potential locations for new stores or where your potential customers are, this creates a great effect to really see your data overlaid on a map. Normally, when you look at Power BI and data flow for self-service BI, you're going to start with Power Query. Then you're going to typically move into Power Pivot to better model that data. Then you can go into either Power View or Power Mat to better present that data. Remember, don't forget about your normal tools in Excel though. Using pivot tables, pivot charts, normal charts are still a powerful way to present data in your Excel environment. Power BI is a great service that we can use in the cloud. This allows us to allow individuals to set up featured reports, set reports to automatically upload or refresh their data, and also used featured questions. With the ability of things like featured questions, users are going to be able to go in and really ask a question of their data and get the answer that they're looking for. Okay, to wrap everything up, let's look at how we can take our self-service report that we created in Excel and upload that to SharePoint and look at it in Power BI. So I'm looking at my Power BI site, and I've already uploaded this into a SharePoint document library, and that would upload like you would place any file into SharePoint. Now the advantages that we see here in Power BI are that I can go in, I can make this a favorite report, I can add it to my featured reports, I can add and remove it from questions and answers. I can even schedule data refreshes. So, unlike just SharePoint where the spreadsheet sits, it has to be open and refreshed, this can actually do that behind the scenes for us. Now, if I click right into this spreadsheet, it's going to open it up in our Power BI SharePoint environment. And this will actually work very similar to if you just opened this in SharePoint. But you can see my Power View is there, and I can actually navigate through it just like I was sitting in Excel. And the great part about this is that any individual that has access to the SharePoint site can look at your report without needing Excel at all. Now, if we take this to the next level, we can utilize the questions and answers section of Power BI. So let's go back here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Ask a Power BI Q&A. And let's see if I say, which postal code had the highest line total. So we see how it immediately generates a nice little bar graph for me by zip code showing me line total. Now if I go of bikes, you see again it changes. So the natural question answer capability is really nice. If we go lowest here, you see now it's actually shifted to sorted by lowest to highest. And if I really would rather see a map, I can click over here on the map and I can zoom in on those and I can hover over to see the amounts sold. This is a great feature that is added to Power BI and really takes that self-service reporting, self-service BI to the next level. Thank you for watching this presentation. If you have any questions at all, please contact me. You can also, again, sign up for our events at www.trainingforit.com/sign up.